Hey, I'm Sherry Thompson, and this is the Black OurStory Podcast. We're here at Africa Global Radio. Our story, our growth, our future. And I got to tell you this. I've got a foodie on board with me. We into it. We into the food. We into the security of food. We're into all about food. We like it, okay? Yes. Dr. Wanida is here. Wow. I tell you, we're going to have a good time talking about food. And just really understanding how we're supposed to be helping our bodies, helping our health with good food. Okay, some of us are still trying to, get that nutrition from big bowls of food. Well, if you've got to pile on your food, that means there's really no nutrition in there. I now eat small little things of food because my food is packed solid. In fact, I'm like, ooh, I'm hungry. Then I get to this little tiny thing of food, and it's like, oh, hunger gone. Good food means you do not have to pile on the food. Am I right on this? Good. Tell us about your passion.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I really, really appreciate it. Been following this podcast for a while.
Really?
Yeah, I've listened to a couple of episodes that you've had in the past. So
which one is your favorite?
So I don't really have a favorite.
Really?
No,
All good?
Yeah, because they're all different.
All good.
So they're all different. So for me, I've always been interested in food and more so the science behind it.
Okay.
Why does something taste the way that it does? Why does something smell the way that it does? And just for how I got into food science as a passion, but also as a career, it's a very, non-traditional one, but I will definitely say as a kid, I used to smell my food a lot. So my parents are actually, like my family, when we talk about it, they're like, it kind of makes sense, but I'm very much a smell person. If it doesn't smell right,
then you can't eat it.
Yeah, I can't eat it. I can't do it. I don't.
But the smell of a food actually tells you whether it's fresh or whether it's spoiled.
Sometimes, but it also depends on how it's prepared,
okay,
right? Because if it's something that's cooked, you have foods that they have these compounds, these chemical compounds, and when heat is applied, it brings out other attributes of that food.
Okay.
So just because, like beets, for instance, I hate beets with the passion. I hate beetroot, but it's good for you, right? It has all these great attributes. I can't eat cooked beets. I can't do it. It doesn't taste, it tastes terrible to me. But if you ask, like my mom, she'll say, oh, if you fix it right, it tastes like corn. It doesn't taste like corn. But I can have it in a smoothie.
Oh.
So when I have it, but with other things, but I can have it in a smoothie.
So you hide the beetroot.
Yes, and it's not as strong because when I've had it, also too, I've used to eating it canned, just growing up. And
not good.
Yeah, not good at all. And it just doesn't do anything.
The tin taste is there.
Yes, it's very much so. And so for instance, is like some things you can taste very different raw versus cooked. But yes, to an extent, if you do cook something like chicken and it smells funny, then yes, that is a huge indication it's spoiled.
It's off.
Yes.
Right now we have a cholera epidemic going on.
I heard.
And I remember the last cholera epidemic we had.
Oh, really?
Honey, it's because we had, dumso. But people were cooking up that food anyway because they couldn't afford to throw that in the garbage. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of deaths from that cholera.
Yeah, cholera is no joke. It's not a game.
Yeah, so we have to eat healthy food and we have to make sure that our food is processed properly.
Well, also too, not only that, it can be processed properly, but if it's not stored because you're having inconsistent electricity supply, there's nothing much you can do. So I think, how are other ways that we can store our food in a safe manner, whether it's through leveraging companies like a Jar to Go where they do canning.
Yeah.
You know, you can't even say freezing, because if you're doing too much freeze thaw, you're introducing temperature abuse.
Right.
And then that causes...
It's called freezer burn.
Yeah, well, not even that, but just like taking something out, putting something back in, you're actually introducing more microbials, and it causes you to get sick because there's some microorganisms that grow at one temperature range. There's some that can grow in a wide ranges. Right. And so that's how people get sick. And then if you also have a water supply, because we're not even talking about galamsey, how that affects everything. Food. All these things come together, and it's
your ecosystem.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of foolishness. Yeah. So I think, what are ways that people can be able to store food and it still be safe? Like, okay, if I made, like, rice is one thing, but even then, like, if you just have plain rice, but because of the temperature here, you have weevils in your rice. So you have to put it in a cooler.
I put it in the fridge. I put my rice in the fridge, people.
I put mine in the freezer because I got too much stuff in my fridge. So,
she's going to freeze the rice. I fridge the rice.
Yeah. Stuff like that. I mean, I used to put it in glass containers. Yeah. And then I look and there's like a weevil in there. And I'm like, how did
that get inside?
Yeah, which means
it was there to begin with.
Yeah, there's probably eggs in there that probably hatched.
Yeah.
And so.
And they had a family.
Exactly.
All up in your rice.
Exactly. And then they had a family reunion that no one asked for. So how are we able to protect our food supply? But also, one thing is what I think as diasporans, especially as Americans, we do not have that relationship with the land in a way. Yeah. Sometimes we are far removed, where it's like, if I see a bug in my food, something is wrong. But in actuality, if you're getting from a farmer, and if I see a worm in my tomato, that's good. That means that there actually is, like, it's coming from the earth. So that's a great indication that my food is real, right?
Real.
It's
very organic.
Yeah, right. And it's, okay, worm, extra protein, however you want to slice and dice it. But I think that we forget that part too. And so we come here and it's like, okay, well, I don't want my food to smell, I don't want my tomato to have dirt on it. Well, if somebody's picking it and it's coming from a garden.
It's going to have dirt.
Yeah, it may have a bug.
The next thing to do is clean it, and how to clean that. So what do we do when we clean our vegetables? What should we be doing?
So it's funny because somebody had asked me this yesterday or the day before about
cleaning. We're on the same plane. Same plane. Yes, go ahead.
So
Let's fly.
So they're asking me about cleaning vegetables, and I said, first, my disclaimer is, okay, yes, I'm a food scientist, but I'm not into preservation. That's not my expertise. But they were telling me how they've cleaned something with chlorine, and I was like, listen, I know we are all bleach.
Do you see me back it up like this?
Like water and bleach.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She believed Trump.
Yeah, so I was like, water and bleach, like just a little bit of bleach. And I was like, no, chlorine will connect to water and then that becomes hydrochloric acid. I was like, yeah, don't do that because it'll kill you. So I think, obviously, like I use vinegar.
Yeah,
or salt. I mean, that's how we can clean collard greens, right? You put salt in the water. And then you can...
And all those little things come up and you see them and like, they're dead. Oop, scoop them out.
Exactly. And a little bit of lime juice.
There you go.
And I'm sure, like, having family from the Caribbean, same, right? We clean it with a little bit of lime juice. So you can do stuff like that. But at the end of the day, okay, yes, I can clean my vegetables like that. But what happens if my water's not clean? Which is a whole other... I think people forget that because everybody's like, just get a borehole. No, but the borehole's...
You got to boil the water.
But if it's mercury in the water, there's nothing you can do.
It's poison.
Yeah, mercury is going to be...
It's poison.
It's there.
It's gone.
So I think that's the other thing too.
That's why when we look at galamsey with the increased mercury, with the increased cyanide, with the increased of all those things, and you have 5 rivers that have gone to polluted like this, and they pass through land where you grow food.
Right.
Then you go.
And then so it's like you have galamsey water, or do I deal with bottled water, which will give me microplastics in my body?
Ooh, talk about that.
So because, when we're consuming water from plastic, there's a whole thing with microplastics is that now people are starting to realize like plastic is actually not good for you. And then because we don't recycle, there's no way to really recycle it. And even if you do, you get these really, really tiny like nanoparticles that are called microplastics, and it gets into the body. There's been studies now that are showing microplastics showing up in people's organs after they die. And you don't think about it, but it causes issues for your body. And I don't know much about microplastics, but I've read enough about it to be like, this is probably an issue.
Okay, so we're sitting here going, food security has become insecurity in some form or fashion because of the way we're packaging our food.
Yes, and we're thinking about convenience. And so going back to using, think about your water bottles. Like, I don't necessarily like having a plastic water bottle. So I have my water bottle with me today.
Okay.
Just a regular water bottle, glass. I was in South Africa a couple weeks ago, and they have a business, I think it's called Blue Water or something. And there's a business that I saw there, and you can buy a water bottle that's glass or some type of sustainable something, and you just pay for your refill of the water. And I was thinking to myself, well, Ghana could do that if we have clean water. But instead of, that's a way of how to, cut down on the use of plastic. And the thing is, yes, you have to worry about maybe the business aspect of it. Somebody trying to take the business idea from somebody else and And that's to be expected. It happens everywhere.
But we have a lot of people here. There's room for anybody.
There's room for anybody, right? And so, and the thing is too, it's like, well, that's actually not a bad thing because you're talking about spreading the education of using glass. Now, the only thing that stinks is that when things break. Now, I feel like here in Accra, like gravity is defied. So it's like you can have something on the table and all of a sudden it's just like on the floor. You're like, how? But other than that,
is that a mini earthquake or what?
I don't know what it is. I just, maybe one of the ancestors like, you don't need this. It's like, oh, okay. I guess I don't. So, but that type of thing. But I think the thing is what's going to be interesting is this new generation of people are coming and emerging, being born into the world. And as we're thinking about the evolution of human beings, of course, there are going to be I'm really intrigued by how is it going to change for people as a society, like really caring about having a sustainable, clean ecosystem. I mean, especially now that we have there's going to be a new president in Ghana. And he's saying that, he wants to continue this initiative, having a clean Ghana. What does it actually look like? Because at the same time, it's great to have a strategy, but what happens when you implement it?
Yeah. How is it being implemented?
Yes. Will it be implemented?
There you go.
So, will it be implemented? Who are the power players? And okay, sure, people will chop their money, whatever have you, but actually are we holding them for real accountable to really make sure we're having cleaner Ghana or in general?
Food is our life.
Yes.
And so if it's not clean, if it's GMO, yes, I said it. And if we're doing things to our food that make the food unhealthy, then we're going to be getting cancer. We're going to be getting all kind of diseases. Yeah. And our children are going to be born deformed. And that's happening now.
Yeah. And I think also, too, this reality of, or fake reality of, if I go to the West, then the food is much better than where it is where I'm at. And it's like, well, it came from there. Like, or the innovation is very different. So you're not actually getting quote unquote cleaner food, or if you are thinking you're getting cleaner food, it's going to be very expensive.
It's not cleaner food. It's
processed
ultra
high processed,
highly processed. Okay, so and that's why I don't have a problem with the raw vegans, because they're like, not processed, not doing anything to the food. We just gonna have it raw.
Right, and the food industry. I just read an article last week. A friend sent it to me. It was about the uproar in the U.S. food industry about people using Wegovy, Ozempic.
What is Wegovy?
It's the weight loss drug that everybody's been on.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, and they're having.
I don't need Wegovy because I've been losing weight. I've been eating less because my food is nutritious.
Good. So yeah, they've been having an issue because people who are taking that drug for whatever reason, it's supposed to be for diabetics, really more so, but now it's being, big, pharma now sees like, oh, okay, people can use it for weight loss. The issue is that because of people taking this drug or consuming it, their consumption choices have changed. They don't want processed food. They want clean food. So they're walking past the Doritos, the chips in the aisle. They're now they now crave.
I like me some Doritos.
Yeah, so they're like craving fruit, they're craving whatever. So it's causing a little, it's scaring the food industry because they've got to switch, but they don't know how because they don't really understand their palate. And so they're like, okay, well, maybe we can produce something that's for people who are taking this drug. What does this look like? And they're really scrambling, trying to figure it out. And it's like, wow, like who would have thought? I mean, now Big Pharma is its own, unnecessary evil. But if however you want to slice and dice it. But the fact that it's actually affecting other industries like the food industry in the U.S., where they're like, oh my gosh, these people are eating clean and they're not buying
from us.
Okay, so I made Doritos. Like this company makes Doritos. Now I have to make Doritos that quote unquote, are clean or don't have high calories or maybe
sodium.
Whatever.
All of the stuff that we do, the Doritos, the coloring, all of that.
And and it's not even a matter of like, oh, because I'm on this weight loss drug, I should eat X. It's more like they don't crave it. It's now kind of reprogramming where they really don't want that.
So here we are in Ghana, and we're talking because, we come from the States and we're talking about food that we used to have, but we don't really have that anymore. So what made you come here to start Crescendo? Tell me a little bit about Crescendo.
Sure. So Crescendo, we are Africa's first food innovation hub located here in Accra, Ghana. And the purpose of Crescendo is that we provide food businesses, whether they are up and coming or, middle at late stage, whatever you want to call it, but providing food businesses with the resources to be able to scale up, whether that is through building, we have this, state of the art kitchen hub in West Legon.
It's a lovely kitchen. It's not just one kitchen. They got several kitchens.
Yeah.
You can actually, use the kitchens in Crescendo to develop your own product.
Absolutely.
And this is an amazing idea because nobody ever had that before. You can come into my kitchen and cook your own food your own way. How dare you? That kind of thing. But the hub means that we're innovating. We're taking a look at food in different ways.
Yes.
I remember my first Crescendo dinner had to do with chocolate.
Oh, the brunch. Yes.
Oh, that food was passion. I felt like I was in love with the food. Maybe it's because it was chocolate. And chocolate is something that I'm in love with chocolate. So all the fusions of chocolate that were through the food, yummy.
But also you didn't even know it was chocolate. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I'm having chicken with a chocolate sauce. It's like nobody knew like, oh wow, there's chocolate as one of the ingredients. Yeah. So we also offer education and training as well as growth and acceleration programs. And so
okay, let's break down the words.
Yes.
You know how you talk because you doctor, okay? And I understand because I was like going to be a doctor, neurosurgeon. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
However, when you say acceleration, when you say scale up, what do you mean by this?
Sure. So Eva, I'll even take it one step back because when we talk about education and training, a lot of people assume that it's a culinary school. And it's not. When we're talking about education and training, we're talking about offering resources as well as work, in the form of workshops, whether it's connecting through a global network, where a lot of food businesses do not have that exposure. So for instance, we had a workshop back in August that was talking about raising funds. A lot of the times people assume that if I need to raise money for my company, it has to be through an investor, which is fine. That's one way. And there's several different types of investors. There's angel investors, there's impact investors, so on and so forth. But people don't understand that even if you are for profit, you can also apply for a grant.
Yeah.
What does that even look like? Or if you want a loan, what are the terms? There's so many different ways of receiving funding. And that was something that was important to me to have because we just received a grant ourselves. And we're a nonprofit. And so, I think also too debunking the myth of what a nonprofit is. A lot of the times people assume you're a nonprofit, you don't make money.
You have to make money to be sustainable.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
Any business.
Any business, please. Not for profit does not mean not for profit.
Yeah.
It means that the profit is not the primary goal of the organization.
It goes back to the beneficiaries, and that is the people that we serve, right?
Exactly.
And so that was important to me as far as having we were talking about this internally about having this workshop. We just developed our calendar for next year, and we're looking at different ways, different business development workshops that a lot of businesses don't know or think about. I mean, I'm looking at it from a food scientist side, which is a lot of people want to know the science of food. Everybody's like, oh, gastronomy, and then I was asking one of the chefs, like, break down, what is gastronomy? And she's like, oh, it's like the science behind such and such, and and I was like, food chemistry? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, we call it food chemistry. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's it.
And I was like, yeah, there's a book that you read. It's called by this guy named Finema. Like, you learn all the, chemical reactions and
there are chemical reactions in food.
There is. You have to have.
There's some foods that you're not supposed to have with other foods.
Yes, and or just even fruit that you're not supposed to eat with, because everybody's body is different. It's the the metabolic reaction to that. So we're talking about like food safety, right? We're looking at food photography. Like, if I have a product, how do I style it to make sure that it's actually, when I'm introducing
delicious looking,
right, when we're introducing it into the market, what does that look like? And also looking at it from like even a financial side or a marketing side. So when we're talking about the scaling up, the acceleration, a lot of the times it's about market entry or market penetration. And that could be locally, that could be regional, that could be continental, that could also be global. And that continental is still global. A lot of times when we think global, everybody wants to go to the US or they want to go to Europe. But
we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Exactly.
Guys, go after. This thing is amazing. If we start selling to each other and buying from each other, our African economies will grow.
Yeah.
Especially with food. I mean, we get a lot of food from different African countries.
We do.
And I don't mind that. I mind the food coming from outside the continent.
Yeah, I mean, Egypt, I went to Egypt. They make strawberry juice in Cairo. It is divine. It is so good. South Africa has lychee and cherries. I went on a cherry binge. It was bad. It was the nice, like the Bing cherries. The Bing cherries.
Okay, stop it.
Yeah, so
don't do this. I'm not on TV. Don't do this.
But like even in Botswana, they have it in Mozambique. Like stuff like that people don't think about. You want peaches? I was there for Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving. So I made a sangria. I was like, oh, I need peaches. I need plums. I just got everything in South Africa because it's there. Because
it's literally the climate of America.
Yeah, or even thinking about nuts and whatnot. They have I don't like macadamia nuts, but they have macadamia nuts in abundance.
And I love macadamia nuts.
I have a macadamia nut story, and I'm like, it has traumatized me for the rest of my life.
We're gonna come back to that story. This is the Black Our Story podcast. I'm Sherry Thompson, and I'm here with Dr. Wanida of Crescendo fame, and we are here at Africa Global Radio. Our story, our growth, our future. Be back in a minute. We're at Africa Global Radio. Our story, our growth, our future. And this is the Black Our Story podcast. I'm having a good time talking about food. But you know what? I'm learning a lot more about food than just about food. We're learning about the science of food, the combinations of food, what combinations are good and what combinations are not so good. Why do you hate macadamia nuts, girlfriend? What happened?
So I was in my doctoral program.
Oh, you had a traumatic experience.
Yeah, we used to do my PhD's in the work of peanuts. I worked in a USDA ag research lab, and it was on peanuts. And we also work with different nuts. So we used to have a sensory panel where you're trying, trying different nuts and giving.
Peanut was, Carver did an amazing job with that peanut.
He did. So we were
probably don't even need other nuts.
That's true. So we were trying different. We had a sensory panel from different, and we would take on different clients where we're trying. We're giving them ratings on X, Y, and Z, whether it's crunch, taste, whatever. So we had a texture panel, and one of the samples was macadamia nut. And the guy who was running the panel, because it was his set of clients, he could eat out of a trash can, essentially. And he passed around this nut. He took one and passed around. That's what we would do. We take a sample, go around. We all put it in our mouth, and it was the most rancid sample I've ever had. It tasted so old. Now, mind you, this is 2000 and probably 11.
And this was here?
No, this was in the U.S.
Okay.
And that sample probably was from 1985. That's how old, I could only imagine. I don't know if it was, but that's how old it and spoiled it tasted. And we were all like, oh. And so he was just chewing along. And he wasn't an older guy. He was probably in his early 30s. And we just looked at him and he's like, what? And we're like, dude, this is disgusting. This is spoiled. And he's like, oh, it's not that bad. And we couldn't even rate the sample.
Because it was spoiled.
It was spoiled. And I mean, yes, I like macadamia nut, in cookies and stuff like that. I can eat it. But by itself, ever since then, it's
a traumatic experience.
It was very traumatic. So I said, you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay.
I'm having a spoiled macadamia nut. But that tells you something. Food really doesn't last that long.
No. And
you can preserve it, but 10 years down the line, that's not going to be food anymore.
Right. And I have no idea. We don't know how fresh the sample was.
Right.
I mean, we don't know. People would ship stuff to us. And of course, you have to go through customs and get it cleared and all that other stuff. And we would test it, for aflatoxin, for things like that to make sure, it was edible. So I have no idea what happened from there, but I was like, I'm okay. I'm gonna pass. It's a hard pass for me. But you had asked me about how did I get here before the break, and I'll just say quickly that with my career, I went through a couple different things. I worked for the food industry at one point, and then I worked for the U.S. government. And I did ag policy as a result of being there for a fellowship for PhD and MD PhD scientists who are interested in doing policy work for the executive branch or for a congressman. And I was able to work at the U.S. Department of State, worked in their agricultural policy program. And I've always said I wanted to work in international ag policy. That was what I wanted to do at that point in my life.
In the U.S., do we have good food?
Oh, I wasn't even that. Well, I was looking at it from more of an international perspective.
Okay.
So that was looking at how.
So compared to international food standards, does the U.S. have good food?
I mean, well, I would say yeah. I mean, the thing is, everybody follows the standards. So it's about who sets them and, who's calling the shots. But we all, no one is not, I would say it's hard as a country unless you're a new country to say you don't know what to do. And we were a part of a couple different bodies, food standard bodies like Codex Alimentarius, and there's different countries that are a part of that. And this is an international food setting body. Ghana has a board.
Okay.
They send
Let's talk about Ghana because I came here and I felt a lot healthier with the food here.
Yeah, agreed. I agreed. And I would definitely say that it's here because there's not a call for the need for ultra processed food is not a thing here.
Okay.
And when I worked on food standards, it wasn't looking at process. It was more so working on tobacco policy, making sure tobacco companies weren't selling vape pens to children. And parts of China, stuff like that. So that's just no, you're not supposed to do that. That's not it at all. And when I came to Ghana, which was as a result of the State Department, I lived here. I first came in 2017 because I worked on biotechnology. So you're talking about GMOs. We worked on GMOs. And so it was talking about, Ghana had passed had signed their GMO law with our parliament's approval, I think back in 2016 to 2017.
No, hold it there. GMO, genetically modified organism.
Yes.
your food is somehow manipulated into another type of food. Yeah, or another type of something.
Not necessarily true.
Okay.
So
tell me what's true.
So genetically modified organisms are actually, they've been around for a minute. So the thing about it is that if you have bananas, so for instance, we'll use bananas. Okay, so the bananas that your parents and probably your grandparents used to eat no longer exist. Because a disease from whatever, the climate, somebody's bug, whatever, has wiped out the species of bananas. So instead of getting rid of bananas in general and us not having bananas at all, there is a, basically it's like a breeding, it's not really breeding. So all the geneticists, please don't kill me for this, but you basically are taking, not create, but you manipulate so that that same disease will not affect the next banana, so on and so forth. Right. So it makes it become resistant to that disease. Now, the caveat is it is going to be resistant to a lot of other things which naturally happen. So that is what it is. It's more, that's what GMOs was actually used for, is like, okay, kind of like stem cell research. That's what I would say. Okay. More so like, okay, this disease affects this type of plant. So then I'm going to actually change the plant or change the makeup of it. It's the same thing, but just slightly, like you said, manipulate it or change it so that nobody can say like, oh, it's the same banana your grandparents had. No, it's actually a different variety. It's just that this one is resistant to banana rust. Okay. And that's it. Now it's become, so I think the thing is too, is like media has really taken some things and rode like to the wind. So it becomes a different thing. And so when we're talking about diseases, because now we're dealing with climate change, right? Yeah. It's here. Yeah. It's been here. And so with climate change, a lot of the crops that we have are no longer around. They've become extinct. So if you're trying to keep something around, you have to be able to take that last little seed to be able to make sure, like, if I still want bananas, and I want to have bananas because they are good for the ecosystem. And I know as climate change is happening and it keeps introducing this type of disease, I have to create a seed where that, it's the same banana variety. And, I don't know nobody knows what the effects are. It's the same thing with even like Wagogi. Nobody's know what the effects will be in 20 years. But I know that, okay, I can still have these banana plants because this particular disease doesn't affect it. Them. But if we get bugs that are also becoming resistant, then they're gonna go back to the lab and be like, oh, okay, so you thought banana rust was your problem.
Okay, no, don't worry, we are your problem. Yeah. So I'm of the opinion that as ecosystems change, food does change. Yeah. So what we're doing is interfering with that change.
I think the thing about it is interfering from what perspective? Is it man interference? Because the thing is like, if man wasn't messing with it, we probably wouldn't have that issue. And so, or is it that the reason why it may not be gone, it actually may be needed because it actually does serve a purpose. And maybe let's say you have a dog and your dog is supposed to be around for 20 years. Mm-hmm. But if you're neglecting it and your dog provides, it can't be around for 20 years, right? But then now
haven't fed it, there's no water, and now it's going to die.
And now you don't have security. And you don't have security. Yeah. So the thing about it is too, when you look at it, it's like, okay, yes, not everything is supposed to be around, but why are we shortening things because of our own neglect? Right. So that, and it actually and who knows, that purpose actually could evolve, but because we've cut its lifespan short, we actually wouldn't know. It's like we're self-sabotaging.
So climate change is the real problem that changes the food aspect completely.
And humans have,
and we're climate change.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's us. Yeah. We're the problem.
And the thing about it is, yes, like, does the world evolve? Absolutely does. And we may never know the answer to that. But if for instance, we talk about the evolution of Accra, right? And how Accra is having so much real estate being built, so much urbanization, but there aren't any trees. We're turning into a concrete jungle. Right. That means that all the things that happen with having a balanced ecosystem is now going to change.
It's not happening.
So the thing is, yes, you're starting to see things die, but we can live in harmony with nature. We have as man for several centuries. So now, okay, I want to build this 800 apartment household or apartment building for this certain type of people. But let's be very clear, those certain type of people also are coming from a space where they wish they had more greenery, more clean air, because now that means you're going to have more cars.
Yeah.
That means that now there's going to be less shade. We've noticed how, like, I look at my Google weather, right? For instance, Accra is 5 degrees hotter than it should be. Last year, 2 years ago, it wasn't this hot. I mean, it was hot.
A lot of us really are sitting there sweating, and I don't know about you guys, but when I wake up in the morning, I'm swimming in my bed.
Yeah.
The sweat is, I'm like, okay, who threw water on me? That kind of thing.
It does really make you question, because you're like, did I just
swimming? It's a swimming pool.
Yeah, and for all and the thing about it is that we don't want to take that accountability but we have to. We have no choice. Like, we have no choice.
Or you can be like Elon and try to get to Titan, or whatever planet he wants to get to escape.
Right. And so then the thing is like, also too, you're going to go
multi-billionaires building spaceships.
Right. But the thing is that they're also going to go there and mess up that place too.
Because they messed up this one.
Right.
Okay. I tell you, I do have another segment coming, so watch out. I'm coming back small, right? This is Africa Global Radio, our story, our growth, our future. And I'm here on the Black Our Story Podcast. I know who I am. Do you know who you are? Come here, come back soon. Mwah. Okay, we're back. This is the Black Our Story Podcast with me, Sherry Thompson, and I'm here with Dr. Wanida. And I thought we'd talk a whole lot about food, didn't we? About the science of food. We got all into it. I needed to get into you. What brought you to Ghana beside, studying food? What's been happening on your journey here? Has it been spiritual? What's going on?
So I first arrived in Ghana in 2017. I came here as a result of hosting a one-day workshop as a representative of the U.S. government working for this Department of State. And it was connecting women in biotechnology. It was a series of workshops that we had as part of a gender strategy that I created when I was at the State Department. We had one in Ethiopia, one in Ghana, one in South Africa. And the embassy in Accra, the U.S. Embassy Accra, liked the work that I did so much. They asked me if I would be interested in coming on as a embassy science fellow, which is a scientist who works at the embassy, to do some work at the embassy in 2018. So I came in 2018. I lived here for about 3 months. Really loved it. I also went to other countries. I think that's the other thing too.
She traveled.
Yes, I went to, and I've always traveled as a kid. So, that's a privilege there. But then also traveling throughout college, throughout graduate school, whenever I could. And, and of course, like most Americans, we go to Europe, maybe to the Caribbean or whatever. But, I went to Korea and, that while I was working for state, and that was like a dream for me, as well as other places. And one spot I wanted to go to, of course, was Ghana. And I have a cousin who's married to a Ghanaian. Mm-hmm. So I've always kind of knew about Ghana some way, shape, or form. I went to an HBCU. A lot of my friends are.
Which one?
I went to two. I graduated from St. Augustine's University, was college then, and then North Carolina Central University as well. And then I got my PhD at PWI, predominantly white institution, NC State University. So I stayed in North Carolina for 12 years. So I was here. I lived here for 3 years. I worked on regional environmental issues and then worked with a lot of women entrepreneurs. That was the work that they wanted me to do. And so while I was here, I got a chance to travel to Togo. I went to South Africa, and just something different. And when I came back, my fellowship was over because it was just a 2-year fellowship. I really liked working in Accra. I really liked working for the people that I work with in the office. Like I had a really, really cool team, just knew some really good people. And I knew I always wanted to live outside of the U.S., but it was just a matter of where. I mean, my heart will be in Lisbon, Portugal, but...
and there are a lot of us going to Portugal for some reason.
Oh my God, Portugal is amazing. If you haven't gone, like, it's great. But at the same time, like that same peace that I felt was also here in Ghana. Like I love that I can get fresh fruit on the street. I love that at the time there was a lot more trees. And this is Beyond the Return, a lot of people coming to Ghana. At the influx that they're coming to now. Okay. And so I came back in 2019, on my way to Cotonou, because I went to Benin for work. And so was able to travel. I traveled more of the continent. So like I said, I've been to Ethiopia. I had been to Ghana. I had been to Togo. I've been to South Africa. A few of my friends, we decided to do a girls trip. So 2 of them were my sorority sisters. And one was a friend of mine.
Mention the sorority.
Oh, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And
that's okay, because I'm an AKA.
We get along.
We get along.
So I took...
she wearing green. There you go.
I didn't wear my elephant today, but it's all right. But so for me, it was a matter of, we wanted to travel. So we decided to meet in Johannesburg in South Africa. And we went to Botswana, so we went to Gaborone, and then we went to Mozambique, and then went to Cape Town. And that was the first time I actually got a chance to see the southern part of the continent. And it's very, very, very different, right?
Very different.
Very different. And it was a really great trip. And I was like,
Did you go to Namibia?
No, I haven't been yet. It's on my list.
But.
I've heard.
Go.
Yes.
Let me know.
Yes. Okay. Well, now I don't know. South Africa their pilots were on strike. Their South Africa Airlines were on a strike about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if it's still happening. Right. But I went and I was like, this is great. And since then, I've been to, of course, I went to Abidjan. I've been to Cairo in Egypt. I've been to Morocco. So basically, your life has been seeing the continent, seeing the things that you can do in your experience. It's basically traveling and meeting new people, meeting new destinations, and understanding what's going on. Right. For either work, a lot of it was work, or a lot of it was just, and a little small slither of it was for pleasure. Right. But a lot of it was for work. And you get to see how people
So what do you do for pleasure?
So, I still travel. I love to travel.
Okay. So that is pleasure.
Yeah, that is pleasure. But so I'm like, oh, okay, I get to, hit 2 birds with 1 stone. And so the opportunity came for me to be able to come back to Ghana to work for a small company. So I left my State Department job, and I was actually applying for jobs anyway. I had even had an interview in Honduras. And Honduras is also beautiful. So I decided to, go to Ghana because I really sat and thought about, what did I want my life to be at the time? I wanted some type of peace. I know a lot of people come here, like you said, they have that spiritual connection. Yeah. They feel like they're from here. And that's great. I don't necessarily feel like that. I feel like for me, it's more Benin. Like when I went to Benin, I was like, oh yeah, I think my family's definitely from here. Some part of it, right? But I love the peace. I love eating, like you said, the fresh fruit, tilapia that actually tastes amazing, and just learning more about the culture. I also had a support system here. My friends I met a lot of people here who work for the embassy that were still here when I came back. And I decided to, and I thought about family. My cousin's husband is Ghanaian, so why not? I know he's going to be here twice a year for like 3 months out of the time. And he's much older. He's like a couple years older than my parents, but they've all known each other for, of course, decades. Their daughter, she and I are a year apart. So she may come to Ghana. So it's like, okay. So you had roots here. Yeah, exactly. So it's like I have the roots. I can get to the U.S. fairly quickly, as opposed to if I was in like Kenya, where it would take 20 years to get back to the East Coast. And now I have family. My sister lives on the West Coast. So just thinking about all that logistics, and
it makes sense.
Yeah, and Ghana was something was familiar.
And it's the center of the world.
Right.
And we are here at the center of the world.
And it's equator heat. Like, you will get this equator heat all the time.
There you go.
So yeah, so that's how I got here. And then once I started working, the pandemic hit. It wasn't really, I didn't see it as a point to go back to the States.
No, that was a point to stay out of the States.
Yeah, my dad worked in healthcare. He was like, do not come back. He was like, we'll see you on the other side. And so 2021, I came back, and then I left the company that I was working with at the time. And so for me, you know, this idea of having a kitchen space is nothing new, right? A co-working kitchen space is not a quote unquote new idea. They have them in the US, they have them in Europe, they actually have them on the continent, but it's different iterations of it. And they have some in South Africa, they have one in Kenya. But as far as it being like a one-stop shop, the way that we have it, that's something that is kind of my flavor.
Innovative.
Yeah, it's innovative. So I was talking to a sorority sister of mine, and she said, well, you've had this idea for this kitchen space. Why don't you just start it? Like, what else you got to do? She's like, you have the money. You know, you have the money saved up from your savings. You know, you're consulting, because that's what I was doing after I left this company. I was consulting for, you know, governments, kind of just doing, you know, and things were easier, things were cheaper. So it was like your money went further along, right? And so she's like, just start it. And so we started doing online trainings, actually an in-person training in 2021 about food safety. And it just kind of it's still gradually getting bigger. But it takes 5 years for a company to grow. It may be a little bit more if you're talking about where in the world. And we were doing in-person online stuff. We were training restaurants in person, going to their facilities to teach them about food safety. And then I decided to go ahead and do a brick and mortar. I got the house in 2022. I'm renting a house out in West Legon. And then we did renovations, and then we opened in 2023. So the fact that we'll be open for 2 years in January of 2025, and there's now all these other hubs that are similar coming after us.
And that's okay.
And which is great, because I'm like, I can't serve everybody. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I think I always get annoyed with the narrative that they are touting, which is, oh, they're the first, this has never been done. And I'm like, well, obviously you haven't done your research. And then when they find out, like, oh,
Crescendo was there.
Or you're the Crescendo lady. And
you're the Crescendo lady. Oh, and we're following you.
Exactly. Oh, we've been following you. And that's like, okay.
For real.
But we're the first, right? So it's very interesting. And then also we're pivoting. So, and pivoting in a good way, where now we're looking at it, we always were a community-based organization, but being more loud about community-based. Also, really playing off of the network that I have and that connecting that I always love to do. And we started a program last year, but we're really now kind of like officially launched it, called Plate to Plate. And Plate to Plate is basically bringing people from across the diaspora, even if they are Ghanaian, they live in the U.S. They're like born and raised in Ghana, went to the U.S. for school or something, and now they've been working there. It's about bringing people together and doing a knowledge exchange program, not only in Ghana, but the plan is to, of course, expand to other African countries. So we just received funding from the U.S. Forest Service and USAID to bring 5 researchers or 5 people in the food space who are either associated with HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, or have some type of foothold within the food community, especially for Black and Brown communities.
Okay.
To come to Ghana for about 2.5 weeks to learn about land degradation, natural resource management, as well as food security. And we're looking at, more so the academic side of things, because those are folks who are teaching our future, right? So they're coming here. They're going to be traveling around Accra, but also going to Takoradi.
I hope you bring some people that want to show us how to do some urban gardening.
Yeah.
Urban farming.
Right.
Because that's kind of where I'm headed towards when I talk about agriculture. Because, I am a mentor. I'm a mentor to like how many
thousands
women in agriculture. Don't ask me where my farm is. It does not exist, but I actually mentor them. And one of the things I've actually told them is that urban gardening or urban farming, to me, is the next trend.
Yeah, they started it here a little bit. But it hasn't taken a hold.
No,
like it
they
should.
need to take a hold of it. You need to grow your own stuff.
Well, let's even take it one step further. And this is what I want to challenge people who are in the real estate space. You want to build all these whatever. Why don't you just put gardens in your space?
Yeah.
To have a community garden in your space.
It's a we space.
It's a we space. And, you could capitalize it however you want. But people aren't talking about that kind of stuff. Like
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you should have that because at some point, people are love creating this have and have not mentality. And that's not going to be good because, if we get to this level of chaos, then guess what? Y'all seen Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to die. It's not a game. It's not a game. And so that is important for me. And that's why we have plate to plate, because you're taking information from one plate and sharing it to another.
That's right.
So that's why it's plate to plate. And so for us, we're looking forward to having people come next year, because it's not, I'm coming from the U.S., I'm coming from Canada, I'm coming from wherever, to show people here how to do it my way. You're also learning it too. And so what they're being charged with.
We have some really amazing innovations that we need to go back to.
Exactly. And not from a commercialization process, because a lot of times people come here, they see it, they'll capitalize it when they go back to their home country, and then they don't even give the credit. So what's important to me is that, what we're doing is with these, especially if they're academics, they're doing curriculum development. How are you actually using what you learned and putting that into your curriculum? And then take it a step further. The people that you've met, partnership, what are the partnerships that you've actually were able to flourish from your visit here? So checking base with them over time too, because that becomes a bigger case study. And then the process continues and continues and continues. So that is something that with Crescendo, and that's what sets us apart. It's the first ever culinary residency for anybody that has ever been done ever. And it's something that I've dreamed about for years. And to be able to get a lot of no's, or, you get people who are like, I'm kind of interested, but I can't come, and da-da-da. And now it's like, we got a grant to bring people, to bring 5 people. And it's just the beginning. And our press release was just, it was just added to Cuisine Noir magazine with Crescendo, and having this first ever culinary residency. It's not just academics. There's so many power players that are part of this food ecosystem. So what I love about talking about plate to plate are the people that I've met in this process. And I just had a conversation with a woman. She's Ghanaian. I think she was born and raised in New York.
Oh, okay.
So she's American, and she now lives in Philly, which is, we're close to where my family is. Well, my family's from Philly, and we live in New Jersey. But anywho, so she was talking about how she worked in marketing, and now she's really looking at food and fine arts. And looking at the history of food. So she created this sweet tomato. Her name is Francine Tamaclos. So hey, Francine. She was talking about, she was talking about sweet tomato cobbler, and she made a recipe for it. And I was like, sweet tomato cobbler? I don't like tomatoes anyway, but the fact that you can make tomatoes sweet is, I haven't.
Well, it's actually a fruit.
Yeah, it is. But it's just.
People don't think it's a fruit. It's a fruit.
Yeah. And I just don't like raw tomatoes. It's too acidic for me. I can tolerate them here, of course, obviously in stews and whatnot, but by itself, no. And she was telling me this past weekend about how she was researching the history of sweet tomatoes. There was even a Supreme Court case about it in the U.S. And so what does that look like as far as, that information, and looking at it from an art perspective? So that's one side of it, but also looking at the anthropology, where people are looking at the migration of food through was it High on the Hog? How did rice get from, it actually, I don't think it came from West Africa, but it came from maybe, let's say, Latin America, how it came to the U.S., or let's say okra, how it came from West Africa to here because people had seeds, stuff like that. So that's what Plate to Plate explores, is that it's broad in a way where it could be, knowledge is so vast, but we are going to have themes every year. And our theme next year, of course, is land degradation and natural resource management. But after that, it could be climate change and pollution, and so all of that. And then just connecting people from across the diaspora to have, to be able to create solutions that really benefit both parties. Not just I'm going back
and benefit the earth.
Right, and benefit the earth. Not from I'm going back to the U.S. and works for me, but like actually seeing it come into fruition in Ghana as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's time. I'm going to say mwah. And this is the last Black Our Story podcast for 2024. And of course, we went out with food, which is what we're going to be eating for the holiday. And I want to thank you all so much. We'll be back next year with the Black Our Story Festival. That's February 15th and the 16th. And then the next weekend on the 22nd and the 23rd. So do come and enjoy that as well. We'll be telling you more about it in January. This is the Black Our Story podcast. I'm Sherry Thompson. My guest, Dr. Wanida, has been spectacular. And this is Africa Global Radio, where we tell our story, we talk about our growth, and we're going into our future. Peace.